The legal world has been a flutter, especially with all of the the big high-profile trials that we've got going on. Of course, you got the P. Diddy trial that's happening. Harvey Weinstein was on trial last week again. Karen Reed's case that went to the first full day of jury deliberations. That went to that today, I believe. And then, of course, there is what took place in Minnesota over the weekend with the assassination of a former House Speaker and current member of their General Assembly, as well as another lawmaker who he, along with his wife, was shot multiple times. Both had to go in for surgery. Both are said to be recovering. So we had 2 dead, 2 wounded, and a big manhunt that took place. And then today, when they were announcing some of the charges, very early on, it was second-degree murder. And I was like, well, wait a second here. If there was ever a case that had like premeditated written all over it, it was pretty much this case of what happened. Legal expert Jeremy Rosenthal is with us now to kind of suss it all out for us. And Jeremy, the way I understand it in Minnesota, if a charge that you are going to be charged with has the possibility of life imprisonment, I guess it has to go through that has to come from a grand jury.
In most states, felonies have to go to grand juries. So you would think, and not only that, not only you have the legal requirements, it's just a better practice, really. In Texas, obviously where I am, you can charge somebody with a misdemeanor if you are a prosecutor. And you just take an oath to do the best interest of justice. You can sign on something that says this is a misdemeanor. Any other felony, it has to be the citizens of the state. So it's a better practice because things are so severe that we just don't want one person putting you even in the position to be of what the Constitution would call life or limb. So yeah, I would think that all of these things have to be cleared by a grand jury. Which these things are still very new. I would be very surprised, like you, if this remained a lesser homicide, because yes, absolutely premeditation everywhere on this case.
I was going to say, how could it not be? I mean, when you look at what has happened here, you look at all of the evidence, and of course, we haven't seen all of it, but I mean, from what we have seen, this guy doesn't have a chance, by the looks of it, of seeing the light of day ever again. I do know that there was federal charges that were filed against him today as well.
He's got an uphill challenge. I think a fair comparison here would be the Luigi Mangione case. Just a lot of parallels here. Very, very intensive premeditation, a lot of planning. We're moving across state lines. I don't know if that was the instance here, but this guy was impersonating a police officer. He had a mask on. He had a police car, or a car that he had labeled police. He had squad car lights. He had a list of close to 100 officials, if not more, that he wanted to kill or hurt or to do something like this. Not a lot different than Luigi Mangione's manifesto, if you will. So yeah.
Well, and Jeremy, I don't know, maybe this is just an observation on my part, but when the Luigi Mangione thing happened, one of the first things I think a lot of us were saying, and I think you and I even talked about it, was that the fact that this guy was being lionized, right? The fact that this guy was being turned into some sort of a public hero by some for what he had done, right? Taking out the big bad healthcare executive. I think there was a lot of us that were out there kind of ringing the bell going, hey, you know what? When you normalize things like this is going to continue to happen, and it's going to continue to get worse. And then, of course, we saw those 2 young people who were essentially assassinated on the streets of Washington, D.C. as they left the Jewish Museum. And now we've got this where you've got, a lawmaker and her spouse who was literally assassinated inside their home, and then another one who was shot. And now we're just learning this just popped just literally a minute ago. Minnesota State Senator Ann Rest said she was amazed that Vance Belter was parked near her home early Saturday morning. He left after an officer arrived to conduct a wellness check. Mm-hmm. So this guy was just meticulously working his way through this list.
Very, very spooky, very spooky. And from kind of what you're talking about with Luigi Mangione being lionized, we have to separate the action from the politics, the crime from their viewpoints, because when you think about it, they really have nothing in common. I would venture to guess that people who are against big pharma, big healthcare, those conglomerates probably don't want Luigi Mangione speaking for them. And Mr. Belter, if he is, from what I'm told, he's a big supporter of the president. I don't think they need his help. I don't think they want his help. I don't think they want it that way. And if it's any indication, the Department of Justice is coming in really, really hard with him. They've got boots on the ground. In fact, if anything, Luigi Mangione, it took the feds a month to get involved, or something like that, with their complaints and their paperwork. The feds rolled out their complaint today. So violence is violence, and I think that's sort of the clear message that all the authority figures are trying to want everybody to see. So, but it is kind of scary, right? Because, well, we hate Luigi Mangione, but he's got a point. I mean, that's not really conducive. That's not what we're doing here.
Yeah, it just, again, I think when you lionize somebody like that, it makes all the other crazies go, well, hey, wait a second. If that guy can do it, then so can I. And
Right.
here we find ourselves. Let's switch gears here for a second, because I think this Karen Reed case has become really kind of a national spotlight case. This is the second time for her through the legal system after the first trial ended in a mistrial, if I'm not mistaken. She's accused of killing her Boston cop boyfriend by basically running him over with a car after she's being accused of is some sort of a feud. Late at night after they had gotten back from the bar and had been drinking, she hit him with the car and drove off and left him for dead. She's saying that she's being framed. What's the big takeaway when you look at this case kind of from the 30,000-foot perspective?
But this thing's got it all. This is why we have court television, and this is why people watch it on TV. You've got getting drunk, you've got big parties, you've got Christmas even, I think. In this, you've got arguments between the boyfriend. It's very difficult, Mark, when you're in front of a jury and you're arguing in front of a jury and you're making your case. You have to be careful. You have to make sure that the jury is with you. Saying that the police are not doing a thorough job, saying the police are biased, saying that the police have screwed something up. Okay, people will go with you on that. If you have evidence of it, people will go there. They're intentionally trying to cover this up. This is a bigger plot. We have 6 or 7 people that are going to put their career on the line for this. That's much harder of a sale. And they pulled it off in the first trial. It was a hung jury. So they almost pulled it off on the last one. Now, I'm not saying that Karen Reed's guilty. In this second trial, it's a lot more of a traditional battle of the experts. They do have experts on Karen Reed's side who have gotten up and testified the accident, the death couldn't have been caused the way that the authorities think. And this doesn't match, and this bruise doesn't match. That is a more conventional argument. And she could win. She could certainly win, because there's been a lot of doubt cast on this. But that's sort of, I think, the salacious part that the public is just really bitten into. Is it's the conspiracies that we kind of love.
Right. Well, I was listening to some analysis on it today, and they were saying, like, the prosecution, for somehow or for whatever way last time when they went through this, somehow or another, it was neglected to be mentioned that pieces of her tail light were actually wedged into his clothing. But that finally came out in court, and I was like, oh, well, that seems like it might be a bit of a game changer, doesn't it?
Maybe. What happens, Mark, too, people are going to do what they want to do. Juries are people will formulate their opinions, for better or worse. They'll formulate their opinions about 80%, from what I've read, about 80% of the time after opening statement, after the first witness, before the first witness has even come into the courtroom. 80% of jurors have made up their mind, and these are based on these sort of studies that they'll do. They'll do mock trials, and they'll ask the people to vote, and okay, and how would you vote now, and how would you vote now, and how would you vote now? So maybe that turns it, maybe that doesn't. Like I said, we're going to see how long they deliberate. They've been in trial now for about a month. Most jurors will, when they get in and they start deliberating, even if they take their straw vote, even if they all agree one way or the other, they're going to go through all the evidence just because they think that people will question how hard they worked or whether they cared. But they'll go through all the evidence. They'll take a day or two. That would be a quick verdict in my mind. It's probably more going to be like a week, maybe more.
I think they said the last trial, it was 5 days they were out deliberating on this one.
Yeah.
So that seems kind of more in line with kind of what you're talking about. Right. I mean, there's been a lot of evidence. There's been a lot of testimony. There's a lot to comb over. And, it's funny because every time I watch or I hear a different perspective on this case, or them, people talking about it, and legal experts talking about it, inevitably I've changed my mind by the time they get to the end of the segment.
Yeah. Imagine if you're in the jury box. I mean, right. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Jeremy, one of the questions I wanted to ask you this the last time, and I just forgot, and it's kind of totally off topic, but when you're in a trial like that, or you're in any trial, the relationship that you try to foster with the jury, how important is that relationship when it comes to getting your point across? Like, I mean, I kind of figured, like, if a jury sees, two lawyers in a room and one of them is just really an asshat, like, chances are it doesn't matter what evidence he puts forth, they're probably going to vote against him just based off the fact they don't like him.
Maybe it's to answer your question, it's critical. It is a jury trial is a teaching system. You are teaching a class to students, and the lesson is your trial theory. Now, what makes it hard is that you've got an opponent. You've got somebody else who's in there 5 minutes after you sit down. They're completely saying, no, here's why this person is wrong. And it's a very odd dynamic because you have an initial interaction with the jury during jury selection where you're talking, where you're listening, where you're sort of picking the ingredients, if you will, for your salad. And then everybody's quiet. They sit in their box and they watch. But you can have what's really sort of fun from a lawyer standpoint is a little bit of the cat and mouse game. You have a bunch of witnesses who kind of will take the stand, and they don't see one another testify, but you've seen it all and the jury sees it all. And so you can kind of almost make inside jokes that the jury gets, but that the witness doesn't get. And that's kind of fun. So things like that. And you're building rapport and you're building trust. I mean, so it's fun on one end, but on the other end, it's also there is sort of a really weird relationship. And yes, you can absolutely turn jurors off. And some of those jurors have a hard time separating their dislike of the lawyer from their message. But I think that I do also think that as lawyers, as much as it pains me to say, I think sometimes we overestimate even our own impact on a case, our own value. The jurors are there, they want to get it right. And a lot of times I've won cases and been yelled at by the jury, which is fine. You can not like me as long as you did what if I and I'll tell you this, Mark, and then I'll kind of leave it at this. The way I can tell whether or not my advocacy really made an impact is when the trial is over and we're allowed to visit with the jurors or they talk to us, if they repeat my language, if they use some of the catchphrases that I intentionally incorporated in the trial, then I know, okay, this worked. So they may say now, and they're always going to say now, well, lawyer, and sometimes, and when a jury, when they really like you or they like your client, why didn't you point this out, Jeremy? You should have pointed that out. Well, why didn't you do this? Well, why didn't you do that? And we're like, well, we won, but okay, thanks. Okay, next, sure, thank you. But yeah, it's a crazy dynamic, and I've never once been said, hey, marry my daughter. That hasn't happened to me.
Married,
right.
Yeah. So anyway,
Well, there's a first time for everything in your career. You're still young in your career, right? I mean, come on,
right,
there's still time.
Right.
Jeremy, we always appreciate your time, my friend. Always great to catch up with you, and appreciate the insight. And we'll look forward to catching up next time.
All right. Take care, Mark. Bye-bye.